first part of our discussion, we would like to welcome. He teaches history at the De La Salle University and broadcast communication in UP Diliman. He is the author of the book, Bonifacio, Ang Unang Pangulo. He was an original bottom liner in The Bottom Line with Boy Abunda and historical consultant of history with Lord, teleseries Ilustrado, and Katipunan. His Xiao Time television segment has evolved as an Abante Sunday column at the Manila Times every Saturday. He is one of the most active historians on Philippine television. Let's all welcome Professor Xiao Chua.
Makasaysayang hapon po sa ating lahat. The youth leaders, thank you Madeline and thank you Winona. To the youth leaders who are part of We the Future.ph, sa mga taga-Heroes Hub na sawang-sawa na sa akin, Board Member Jason R. Gonzales, our Lodi, singer and activist Reese Lansangan, advocate, and to our beloved Vice President ng ating minamahal na pangalawang Pangulo, Leni Robredo. Ladies and gentlemen, makasaysayang hapon po sa ating lahat. Makasaysayang pambansang araw ng mga bayani. Sa usaping ito ng napapanahon, dahil ako'y tinawag nyo upang ipakita ano ba ang papel ng kabataan na bayani sa kasaysayan ng ating bansa. Pero mas mahalaga yata kung idikit ko sa kasalukuyan. Dilema sa kabataan ngayon na mayroon siyang boses dahil na-democratize ang mga boses nating lahat ay pwede nang ipakita, ay iparinig dahil sa social media. Now more than ever, ay napakalakas ng tinig ng kabataan. Subalit, parang sa kabila ng ating mga tinig, bakit may mga bagay-bagay kung minsan na parang hindi tayo nananalo? Lalo't kung alam naman natin na tama ang ating ipinaglalaban. Hindi ba't nakakapagod na maramdaman ito? Na may boses ka nga, pero parang wala namang nakikinig. Ang laki-laki ng mga problema ng bayan. Parang ang hirap tibagin. Parang ang hirap na ipaglaban ang tama. Isa pa sa malaking tinatamaan ngayon, at dahil marami sa ating mga kabataan, katulad nyo, ay mga artists at mga creative people. Sa lahat ng krisis sa kasaysayan ng Pilipinas, ang mga kabataan at ang mga artists ang isa sa pinakamatinding mga tinatamaan. Sa panahon ni Marcos, ang mga artists na nagre-resist ay kinukulong. Sa panahon naman ngayon, lalo na sa pagkasara ng ABS-CBN, ang mga artist creatives na ang hirap-hirap makahanap ng trabaho, sila ang nawawalan ng trabaho. Sa maraming laban ng ating kasaysayan, tayong mga kabataan o kayong mga kabataan ay humuhugot ng lakas sa ating mga bayani. Subalit, meron na namang problema. Meron na namang dilema. May pagkalito. At hayaan nyo muna akong tumula. Ako'y tutula mahabang mahaba. Monumento. Konting bato, konting simento, monumento. Galing, galing. Haba daw. Oh, anyway, pero anong punto ko dito? Ang mga bayani natin, ang tingin natin sa kanila, mga monumento. Mga sintayog sila ng mga bantayog. Tinitingala Pero ang tingin natin sa kanila ay sobrang dakila at minsan sobrang perpekto. Sa makatwid, ang ating mga bayani sa ating pananaw ay hindi mga tao. Sila po ay mga bato. Gayon din, dahil sa ating nauusok cancel culture, pag nakikita natin na may kapalpakan palang ginawa ang ating mga bayani, kapag sila pala ay may mga pagkakamali o mga kapintasan, ay kinakancel na natin sila. Winawasak na natin sila. Isa pang dilema ay dahil sa ating karanasan ng kolonyalismo na ituro daw sa atin, ayon kay Xiao Chua, ang isang konsepto ng kabayanihan na tinatawag na eroe o eroismo. Mula sa Greek mythology, kung titignan ito, ang mga bayani natin ay parang superheroes ang dating. Sikat din sila at may individualismo. Kumbaga, angat sila sa ibang tao. Kung ganito ang tinuturo natin na konsepto ng kabayanihan, paano na ang kabataan? Bakit? Bato? Titingalain mo ang bato? Gagayahin mo ang bato? Gusto mo perfecto? Maging perfecto, maging super dakila, maging super tapang? Eh, sinong titingalain at dadakilain natin? Si Batman? May ilan akong kwentong ikukwento sa inyo. Saka ko tutuloy sa aking punto. Meron akong 6 na kwento na sana ay alalahanin nyo mamaya sa ating pagtatapos. May isang bata, 11 years old, na nabuhay sa panahon ng walang pagkakapantay-pantay. Nang ang kanyang nanay ay mapagbintangan na nilason ang hipag ng nanay niya, ikinulong ang kanyang ina. At bago pa ikulong, pinalakad mula Kalamba hanggang Santa Cruz. Ilang bayan yun. At hindi man lang nakapagsabi na wala siyang kasalanan. Hindi man lamang pinakinggan. At ang pamilyang ito ay nawalan ng nanay ng 2 taon. Ang lahat ng kanilang mga kaibigan ay tinalikuran sila. Sabi ng batang ito, doon siya nawalan ng pagtitiwala sa pagkakaibigan. Pangalawang kwento, story number 2. Person number 2. Ang batang ito, nakita niya ang kanyang mga classmates. Magaganda ang kanilang mga Amerikana. So nagpadala siya ng sulat sa kanyang ina na nasa kabilang bayan at sinabi niya, "Nanay, pwede ba ako magpabili ng Amerikana dahil kailangan ko?" Ang ginawa ng kanyang ina ay ibinenta ang kanyang mga pan-ani nilang kape. Ibinenta. At ano man ang kanyang nakita, isang barya, ay inilakad niya sa ulan at sa lamig at sa initan ng ilang panahon, maaaring ilang oras o isang araw, patungo doon sa kanyang anak na nasa kabilang bayan. Awang-awa ang taong ito sa kanyang ina. Kaya tila parang hindi na niya ginastos ang baryang ibinigay sa kanya. Makalipas ang 1 taon, namatay ang kanyang ina at sinisi niya sa kanyang sarili ang panghihina nito. Story number 3. Sa kanyang pag-organisa, tulad nyo, nag-organize kayo with the future PH, WTF PH. Itong taong ito ay nag-organisa din. Pumunta siya sa ibang probinsya. Pagbalik niya, sunog ang bahay niya. At silang mag-iina niya, ang mag-iina niya, kasama mag-iina niya, kailangan lumipat sa bahay ng kanilang kaibigan. Patuloy pa rin siya nag-organisa sa kabila ng mga masasaklap na nangyari sa kanyang buhay, hanggang sa ang kanyang mismong anak ay mamatay sa sakit na smallpox habang nasa bahay ng iba. Paglaon, ipinaglaban niya ang kanyang mga kasama sa organisasyon, pero inagaw pa rin nila sa kanya ang lahat. Ipinaglaban mo na, iniwan ka pa, sinaktan ka pa. Pangapat, may isang aktor sa teatro na gustong-gustong awitin ang isang awit ng pagmamahal sa bayan. Ipinalalabas sa ito sa kanyang mga palabas. Sinasama sa kanyang mga palabas. Ngunit sinasabi ng mga pinuno, bawal mong awitin ang awit na yan. Kaya siya'y ikinukulong. Ilang beses nakulong. Story number 5. Bilang isang sundalo, napakaganda ng lokasyon mo. Ikaw ay nasa bundok. Ikaw ay nasa kabundukan at nakikita mo dumarating na ang mga kalaban. Pero anong nangyari? Wala na kayong mga bala. Yung mga nangako na magbibigay ng bala sa inyo, nasaan? Nangangamatay na kayo sa sakit, sa gutom, walang pagkain, walang gamot. At nakita nyo ang mga bato na malalaki sa kabundukan na yon. Anong ginawa nyo? Hinukay nyo at pinagulong nyo sa mga kalaban. Story number 6. Ikaw ay isang kabataang leader na tumungo lang sa iyong pang-araw-araw ng buhay. Marahil tumungo ka sa iyong eskwela, marahil nakipagkita ka sa iyong mga kaibigan. Pero bigla na lamang habang ikaw ay kumakain, pagtingala mo, may nakatutok na baril sa iyo. Walang pasabi, wala man lang warrant, ikaw ay kukunin nila at kahit anong gustong gawin na pagtulong ng mga kasama mo, ay hindi kanila matulungan habang ikaw ay dinadala palayo ng palayo ng palayo. Ano ba ang kabayanihan? Hindi santo ang mga bayani natin. Hindi sila pinanganak na superheroes. Sila po ay mga ordinaryong tao na tumugon sa kanila sa tawag ng kanilang panahon. At iba-iba po ang forma ng kabayanihan, hindi yan iisa. Dahil sa konseptong Pilipino, ang bayani ay hindi lamang ang mga sikat at naaalala. Ayon kay Xiao Chua, ang bayani ay mula sa salitang wani. Ang wani ay isang termino sa ating lumang wika, Austronesian. Ang wani ay patungkol sa pagmamalasakit, pagtulong, at pagbibigay ng iyong kapantasan o kahusayan. Para saan? Para pagsilbihan ang tao nang walang inaantay na kapalit. Ano po ang ibig sabihin ito, mga kaibigan? Ang kabayanihan po ay may iba't ibang muka. Tapang, buhay, husay, talento. kung ito ay yung ibinibigay sa isang bagay na mas malaki pa kaysa sa sarili mong pangangailangan para sa bayan. Yan ay kabayanihan ayon sa konseptong Pilipino. Sana ma-realize natin na ang mga kabataan talaga ang nagtatag sa bansang ito. At hindi lang mga kabataan, sila ay mga kabataang alagad ng sine, artista. Kilala nyo naman siguro na nung sa panahon na mayroong sinasabi sa atin na hindi tayo magaling, hindi tayo matalino, sa ibang bansa may isang pintor na ginamit lang naman niya ang kanyang talento, pero naipakita niya, hindi tayo bobo. Hindi tayo mangmang. At ang mga obra ni Juan Luna, kahit na siya ay isang flawed na bayani, ay bahagi ngayon ng ating pagkakakilanlan bilang mga Pilipino. May isa akong naaalalang 18 taong gulang na isang law student sa UST. Na sumama siya sa isang organisasyon na tulad na meron tayo ngayon. Isang makabayang organisasyon. At kahit na bata pa lamang ang taong ito, 18 taong gulang, ay isinulat na niya ang mga lituntunin ng organisasyong ito. At ngayon ay kinikilala natin si Emilio Jacinto bilang isa sa mga arkitekto ng pagkabansang Pilipino. At may isang tao na pinalilibutan ng mga eksperyensyadong politiko. Pero tinanggap niyang hamon na pamunuan ang revolusyon. 28 anyos. At ang taong ito ang nagdala sa atin bilang pinakaunang konstitusyonal na demokratikong republika sa Asya sa pagkapanalo ng ating revolusyon. At alam natin ang papel sa kabila ng kanyang mga pagkukulang ni Emilio Aguinaldo sa kwento ng ating bansa. Balikan natin ang kwento natin kanina. Naalala niyo ba si person number 1? Yung nakulungan ng ina. Ang taong ito na nakita niya ang hindi pagkakapantay-pantay na nararanasan ng kanyang pamilya at ng kanyang mga kababayan, ay tumungo sa Europa upang kausapin ang ating mga Panginoong Kastila. At sa edad na 26, inilambag niya ang isang nobela na tinugurian ngayon ng Penguin Press na the first major artistic manifestation of Asian resistance to European colonialism. Ang nobelang ito ay ang Noli Me Tangere at ngayon si Gat Dr. Jose Rizal ay isa sa ating mga pambansang bayani. 26. Ang batang tumanggap ng barya na isinumpa sa bangkay ng kanyang ina na magiging malinis, magiging tapat, magiging parehas. Nang mamatay ang taong ito, nakita ang barya na yon sa kanyang mga kakaunting gamit. Ang barya na marahil na yon na nagpaalala sa kanya, dapat pagsilbihan mo ang bayan, maging worthy ka. Yang barya na yan ang paalala ng pagmamahal ng nanay mo sa iyo. Ang taong ito po ay nag-ipon ng pera para ipadala sa Europa sa mga propagandista. Eventually, siya ang nagbalangkas ng mga batas, alituntunin na naging batayan ng ating pambansa. At ngayon, si Apolinario Mabini ay kinikilala natin na utak ng unang republika ng Pilipinas. Person number 3, Sa edad na 28, ang taong ito na punong-puno ng personal na trahedya pero patuloy na nag-organisa. Ang nagtatag ng isang makabayang organisasyon. At anong ginamit niya? Ginamit niya ang kanyang pagiging makata at pagiging aktor upang kumbinsin ng tao na ibigay at ialay ang kanilang sarili sa isang kabaliwan na konsepto. Mamamatay tayo para yung susunod sa atin ay mabuhay. Pinamunuan niya ang pinakaunang nasyonalistang himagsikan laban sa kolonyalismo sa Asia. At sa kasamaang palad, pinagkanulo siya ng kanyang mga kasama. Subalit sa kabila nito, si Pangulong Andres Bonifacio ay kinikilala ngayon bilang ama ng sambayanang Pilipino. Hero number 4. Ilang beses nang nakulong. Sa panahon na yon na ipinagbabawal ang awit. Ang awitin natin, kaya hindi ko maintindihan ng mga tao ngayon na nagsasabi, do we really need freedom or do we need discipline? Hindi ko talaga maintindihan. Kaya nating awitin ang mga awitin natin na gusto nating awitin. Kaya nating ipahayag ang ating. Bakit mo ibibigay yon? Kung may mga tao noon, tulad ng aktor na ito, na kinukulong dahil gusto niyang awitin ang ating pambansang awit. Ang taong ito, si Aurelio Tolentino, ang kinikilalang Piolo Pascual ng kanyang panahon sa larangan ng teatro. Panglima, sino ang hindi nakakaalala ng sakripisyo ng ating mga lolo at lola veterano? Marami sa kanila, mga kabataan lamang na katulad ninyo. Pero sila ay tumugon. At yung iba, 17 years old, underage, nagbuo pa ng guerrilla dahil ayaw silang tanggapin sa army. At sila'y lumaban at nagkaroon ng mga tagumpay. Ang mga guerrilla na ito na kabataan, sila rin ay gumawa ng mga tula, sila rin ay gumawa ng mga iba't ibang akda. Sila po ang nagpanalo ng ating himagsikan, ng ating digmaan laban sa Hapon. We won the war. And on September 3, September 4, the end of World War II in the Philippines, 75th anniversary ng pagkapanalo ng ating mga kabataang bayani. Story number 6 is every young person who was arrested during martial law. The sense of danger was there, pero sinuong nila yun. And when they were caught, they were tortured. Pwede naman nilang sabihin, tama ng pag-torture sa akin, di ako magiging mayaman, di ako makikinabang pag ako ay naging bayani. But no, pinatay sila, sinaktan sila, hindi nila alintana, masakit. Pero gusto nilang magkaroon ng magandang Pilipinas ang kanilang mga anak at ang kanilang mga apo. At tanong na lang sa atin ngayon, eto, dahil sa kanila malaya tayo ngayon, silang naging inspirasyon na ang ibang tao ay maging bayani din. Sumamang lumaban, magkaisa, pabagsakin ang mga rehimen na malalakas. Ang mga sumisiil sa atin. Yan ang pamana nila sa atin ng ating kalayaan. Pero, ang pamana ipinapamana lang sa mga tao worth it. Ang kayamanan ay pinapamana lang sa mga worth it na tao. Ang tanong na lang sa atin, how do we become worthy of it? Kasi sinasabi lang, wag lang ipagdiwang yung mga bayani, patay na yung mga yan. Hindi dapat tayo nagtatanong sa kanila ng gano'n. Ang tanong dapat sa atin ng ating mga ninuno, Are you worth it? Kasi ang mga balasubas, hindi binibigyan ng mana yan. And so, what does our heroes expect us to do as young people? Simple. Tanggalin ang noli me tangere. Ano ang noli me tangere? Ang noli me tangere pala ay isang lupus erythematosus sa eyelids. Isang cancer sa eyelids na kapag hinawakan mo at pinilit mong gumutin ay lalong sasabog. What do I mean, ladies and gentlemen? Our heroes wants us to not have this noli me tangere cancer. Tanggalin natin yan. Buksan natin ang ating mga mata. Feel the pain of our ancestors, of our fellow men. Damhin natin ng sakit. Sapagkat kung nararamdaman mo ang sakit na nararamdaman nila, kung nakikipagkapwa ka, kung naiintindihan mo sila, doon mo lamang pwedeng ipaglaban ang kapwa mo. Gamitin ang sakit. A lot of us are depressed sometimes. A lot of us have anxieties. I hope that we can channel our anxieties. And when we feel other people's pain, that we can also channel them. Using our talents to do creative resistance. And we resist the evil in our country. Gamitin ng sakit upang ipaglaban ng kapwa. Gamitin ang talento sa pakikibakang ito. I am calling for creative resistance. At tandaan niyong mabuti na ang kabataan ng bayang ito ang nagbuo ng ating bansa. The history of the Philippines all throughout is the history of pain. But the main point is to change it. Ladies and gentlemen, let us change it. Ang kabataan ay may papel. Nagkaroon ng papel sa malikhaing pagbubuo ng bansang ito. Kabataan, ikaw ang bayani na gagawa ng bagong naratibo para sa kinabukasan. Karangalan po ang makaharap kayo ngayong araw na ito ng mga pambansang bayani. Salamat po.
Maraming salamat po, Professor Xiao.
Lastly, I think that heroic acts can be big and can be grand, but they don't always have to be. They don't have to be seen by everyone for it to matter or for it to be valid. And heroic acts can also be the small things that you do that make people's lives a little bit lighter, a little bit better. And with the internet, our domain, the distance that this pandemic creates is getting significantly smaller because we always talk. And because we can all be connected and united in our ideas and in our feelings, even fears, and our hopes for a better future, in solidarity, we can do little things and big things to keep moving forward. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you for your time. And thank you to my fellow panelists as well. Maraming salamat to We the Future for giving us a platform.
Okay, thank you so much, Reese. And just to update you sa nangyayari sa chat box natin, meron na ditong small movement calling for Reese to be DepEd Secretary. We stand an educational queen daw, yes. All right, so...
The movement you started, okay?
Oh my, palang nag-start. So, at this point, we are moving forward for the panel discussion. Unfortunately, BM Jason can no longer join us kasi as a public official, he has a lot of meetings pa today. But we are very thankful for having him. And now, we will have Professor Xiao and Reese for our panel discussion. So, we are going to start light and easy muna. For our first question, for the both of you po, what do you think are the qualities of the youth of today that make them modern heroes?
Professor Xiao, ikaw muna. Nagturo.
Nagtuho ka. Okay, akala ko ikaw. Oh, anyway, hindi, ganito. Remember na a lot of us have, a lot of young people today are very conscious of their anxieties. No? A lot of them are very conscious about the depression that they are feeling. So I think napakahalaga na makita natin na yung quality na yan, you can use it as your, you say, weakness, but it can also be a strength. Kasi we need that for empathy. The only people who can understand those who are in pain are those who are in pain. Diba? So, tandaan natin ito. Ang feeling ko sa yung mga kabataan ngayon, nakikita ko na very sensitive sila. They're sensitive about their own feelings, but also they are sensitive about others' feelings. And then, yung adept, isama mo yan dun sa you can feel empathy, dun sa adeptness to technology. Kasi ginawa din naman ng mga bayani natin yan nun na yung technology ng panahon nila, yun yung ginagamit nila to transmit a message. So, yung pagkakaroon nyo ng talent ng mga millennials at mga zennials ng iba't ibang mga paraan ng teknolohiya, ay yes, may mga nag-bring up kanina na it can be a boom, it can be a bane, o pwede siya makasama o makabuti. Pero sobrang laki ng potential niya na makabuti. Yun sa palagay ko yung pinakamaganda. Yung sensitivity and the adeptness to technology, yan ang pinakamalaking, what you call this, ganansya ng kabataan para mabago ang lipunan.
So, yung question is how we become modern heroes?
Yes, what do you think are the qualities of the youth of today?
Well, aside from the fact that I mentioned that we are young and the youth have been born into the age of technology, and we can use that because we're adept and we know all these latest apps like TikTok and Snapchat, whatever. We can communicate in unique ways and in effective ways through those platforms. And I think that we are very persistent. I think that since we have the internet, well, at least ako, I grew up with a mentality na I can learn everything. That I can learn how to do everything because I have instructions. I have research materials right in front of me. And it's easy. And I also grew up looking at encyclopedia volumes for my homework. And that was when the internet was not yet parang readily available for a lot of people. So, na-experience ko yung dalawang sides na yun na parang I seek for knowledge because it's elusive, and also I seek for knowledge because it's just right there. I think that we as part of the youth were persistent in that we know that we can learn anything that we want and that we can educate ourselves as long as the information is available, and that we definitely could use all of that information to spread our cause or advocacy or chosen advocacy in whatever ways, especially through the communities, the little small communities that we form within the internet, because the pandemic kind of limits us as to where we can go, what we can do, who we can meet. So now more than ever, technology is at our side.
The next question po is for Professor Xiao. How do we validate our history, and how do we communicate with other people who seem to have their own version of history?
Well, there's a similar question that I've read there na parang yun na nga, paano natin what can we do? I mean, if history is there's no objectivity in it, but there's really a lot of opinion and opinion and perspective and a lot of these things. Subjective talaga. How can we go to the truth? We can go as far as the truth to the evidence. Yun lang usapan. Ebidensya. So, how do I approach this thing? It's very important that you ask that question. Napakagandang itinanong yung question na yan. Kasi tayo, we have good intentions on the non-revision or non-negation of our history. But there is a problem. There are people during the time of Marcos, for example, let's call a spade, Marcos regime. There are some people who did not experience the human rights violations. Diba? So, if these people had children now, ang malamang kinuwento nila, yung magagandang nangyari noong panahon ni Marcos. Diba? Pero, ano ang sinasabi natin dito? If you tell them, i-cancel mo agad sila, na mga mangmang sila, edi wala na, hindi na tayo mag-uusap. So, what I found effective in my talks around the country, kasi even teachers who sometimes are fans of the late president, minsan may nakukumbinsi ka na because I say, I respect the narrative of your parents, or I respect your narrative because that is what you have experienced. But I hope that when I listen to you, makinig ka rin sa akin. Because I have now the narratives of the victims. Because all of our yung testimonies na yan, individual testimonies itself, they're not yet history. They're biographies. How does it become history? You put them all together, and then you see the different things that happen, both good and both bad. But learning lessons. So kung anong nagawa ni Marcos na maayos, matuto tayo at gayahin natin. Kung ano yung ginawa niyang kalokohan at napakalaki din ng impact doon sa atin, matuto tayo doon at gumawa tayo ng bagong naratibo. Yun na naman yan. Bagong naratibo. Hindi yung, ang kahilingan natin lagi, Madeleine, no? Laging sinasabi na, balikan natin yung noon. Ba't babalikan yung noon? Yung noon, inspirasyon mo lang yan. Lalagyan mo ng aral yan. Hindi ka bumabalik sa nakaraan. Reese, binabalikan ba ang ex? Hindi binabalikan ng ex. Itinapon ka na niyan eh. Gumawa tayo ng bagong naratibo. Mag-asam tayo ng bago. At yung bago na yan, tayong gagawa niyan. Tayo.
Yes, thank you, Prof. Xiao. Ang dami pong nag-agree sa inyo na hindi na daw dapat binabalikan yan. Kino-quote na po nila kayo ngayon. Alright, for our next question, this one's for Reese. There's one song you made with Filipino artists, yung Awit ng Bagong Taon, and it really sparked hope in a lot of our hearts, kahit na ang daming nangyayari ngayong taon. So, with the current crisis, what do you think is the role of artists like you? And what advice can you give for other people who want to start using their art as platform for their advocacies?
Okay, thank you for that question. It's challenging. It's really challenging because ako, at least as an artist, hindi lang naman ako artist ng out of hobby lang. Hindi ko lang to ginagawa because I love it, but it's also my job. It's also my work. And it's also the way I pay for things, my necessities, and all that other stuff. So there's no separation, or there's hardly any separation between what I love doing in my own time and what I have to do for work. It's really scary because the pandemic has affected our livelihood and our ability to work in the definition that we were used to. Pero lahat naman tayo apektado, hindi lang kami. Lahat tayo nafe-feel yung effects of the pandemic, and in fact, I have it better than others because I'm still at home. I still have my family here with me, and I can have food pa rin at the table because I have my mom who also has work. So I'm still okay. Pero as an artist, what I can commit to doing is continue writing about things that I observe, things that are true to me, and things that I'm seeing in an effort to understand it better. I have written a lot of songs privately in this pandemic, haven't released them or anything, but a lot of them, or at least some of them, have been influenced by what's happening in the pandemic. And I'm not one to really talk about things outside of myself that much because I am a very inward writer. And talking about other things, especially when it comes to experiences I don't necessarily understand or will never experience, that's scary because it could be misinterpreted as you're putting words into other people's mouths, or you've never known what it's like to live our lives. Why are you speaking for us? It's very hard and challenging. But for me, it also starts with intent. As an artist, I can write about what I see. I can write about what I hope to see. I can create a narrative on my own. I can build a fantasy even. And there's freedom in a way, being a writer and being a creative. And that's something that I wanna embrace fully. And there are scary things to write about, but if your intent is to understand and to try to examine their reasons and why they are living this kind of life, and if you're trying to put yourself in their position because you want to empathize or you want to maybe change your perspective on certain things, then that's great. So yun, as an artist, as a songwriter, for me, that's what I can promise. I can promise to write about things that I am observing, things that I'm hoping for, things that I am hoping to see in the future, and things that I can maybe inspire other people to do. And for other people who are searching for means or ways to be able to express their own advocacies through their own craft, start small. Always start wherever you are, and always start with what you think you can offer at the moment. Again, I mentioned we are limited in certain ways: geography, age, permissions, rules. We are limited by skill set also. So let's start with what we do best, or we can even start with where we are right now. If you're working, what's your work? Where do you work, and what kind of people surround you in your work? Sino yung mga katrabaho mo? Sino yung mga boss mo? And you can start from there. You can see kung meron bang issues na nandyan sa community mo, or meron ka bang mindset na gustong may impart sa ibang tao, sa office mates mo. Maybe through your Zoom meetings. After that, you can do a hangout and you can discuss it freely in that way. And yun, I think that if you start small, if you start with what you can offer at the moment, there's so much opportunity to grow from there, and there's nobody stopping you to make your actions bigger. But it's more important to start small, to start anything even. Start with what you can.
Thank you so much, Reese. Totoo naman na kahit parang nakakatakot magsimula, di ba? We can always start with something. On that po, we have a question from one of our participants, Teresa. Her question is, as millennials or Gen Z heroes, what do you think is the best way to influence older generations about current issues without being seen as OA and by being respectful? This question po is for Professor and Reese.
Okay. Again, we, the young people, or you, the young people, because I think I'm not young anymore. I'm 36, so hindi na siguro. You have to understand us, that we came from a certain generation. So, dito na papasok yung laging sinasabi sa akin ni Leni Velasco ng Dakila, because I'm part of Dakila. Yung radical empathy. O yung, ako, tawag ko doon, revolutionary empathy. Bakit? Sometimes when you try to, even if it is so hard to understand the person na kausap mo, kailangan intindihin mo pa rin. And communicate in a clear way and respectful way what you want to say to him or her. Kung hindi mo kaya sabihin sa kanya, isulat mo. Sulat mo, i-messenger mo sa FB, yung isulat mo sa kamay. Diba? Kasi ganito yan eh. You cannot win the other side if you don't have revolutionary empathy. You cannot win them. You have to understand. I don't want to call them enemies, but just to make a point, you have to understand your enemy so that you can win them. So, isipin mo, you go to the shoes of a person in another generation and what they were thinking. Kasi hindi talaga kayo magkakaintindihan, may intergenerational gap eh. So, yun yung sinasabi ko. No? So, and I also say this, very briefly I'll say this, yung kahalagahan ng creative resistance. Hindi mo pwedeng bastusin yung nakatatanda sa'yo. Kapag gumagawa ka ng creative resistance, anong ibig ko sabihin doon? At malamang naiintindihan nito ni Reese. Mas powerful pa ang mga artistic material o expression kapag ito ay napaka-subtle at hindi radical. Hindi nyo na alam ito, pero assignment nyo ito sa inyong pag-uwi. O, hindi pala, nandyan lang pala sa bahay nyo. Hanapin nyo sa YouTube yung kantang Walang Hanggang Paalam. Oh, that song breaks my heart. Napaganda na siya, love song. Alam mo, walang sinabi tungkol sa ibagsak yun eh. Ibagsak ang ganito, ibagsak ang ganyan. Walang ganon. Pero doon sa storya ng dalawang taong nagmamahalan na kailangang maghiwalay dahil sa kanilang ipinaglalaban. Walang sinasabi tungkol sa ibagsak. Pero naintindihan mo kung ano ang hirap ng mga taong pinaglalaban ng karapatang pantao. So, it's a very powerful song. It's very subtle. So, the creative, you channel that creative resistance. You think of yourself as a creative, revolutionary in a way, no? Kasi hindi naman tinatawagan ng panahon na humawak tayo ng baril. Hindi yan ang tawag ng panahon ngayon. Ang tawag ng panahon, ipagkaisa ang bayan natin, yung bayan natin divided. Yan ang tawag ng panahon, mga kaibigan. So, I hope I addressed the question quite right. So, ano yung sinasabi kong pagkakaisa? Pagkakaisa sa mga kahit hindi mo kauri ng politika, pero irespeto mo dahil pag nagpakita ka ng respeto sa kanya, magre-respetuhan kayo kahit magkaiba kayo. Pag nagpakita ka ng pag-intindi sa kanyang sitwasyon, kahit na hindi siya nagagawin sa'yo, iintindihin ka rin niya. Kasi kailangan, nagbabangayan tayo, nagbabasagan tayo ng bungo eh. Dapat magkaisa tayo, iba-iba man tayo, pero nagkakaisa.
Okay, for me naman, challenging if you have different opinions, but that is what makes discourse beautiful. It is an opportunity to learn from other people because ikaw yung thoughts mo is sayo eh. Alam mo na yan. But if you start hearing from other people, that's also when you start learning. And you may not necessarily agree on what this other person is saying, pero there might be certain things that are valid that you can take and apply to your own belief system and enhance that further. There's always something to learn from everything, be it something super small, super subtle. And tama yung radical empathy, and just always, yun lang, parang it's a rule for me to listen. For example, if ikaw ang hindi naiintindihan ng isang tao, you will also want to be heard by that person, right? You want to explain your side and you want to create a discussion that's safe and that is productive, hindi lang bangayan or kung ano man. And that's challenging because it's dependent on 2 or more people to create discourse and to create peaceful discourse. Syempre dapat lahat ng parties, if or most of the people involved are willing to be peaceful and to go about it and to be democratic about it. So yun lang, parang listen with your heart, listen to understand. I mentioned this before. And respect, recognize also, try to recognize where the other person is coming from. Especially kung ibang generation, kung parent mo yan. Especially kung parent mo, all the more you have to respect them. You have to recognize where they're coming from, try, and create an environment to be able to discuss also what you think. And if hindi sila magbago overnight, that's fine. You can continue opening up discussions for things that you believe in, that they might not believe yet. At the end of the day, especially when we're talking about family, if it's your parents or if it's your tito, tita na iba yung opinion, they all love you. We all have love for one another, and even if our ideas differ, the respect should always be there. So let's not stop at di niya ako naintindihan, ayoko na, I'm tired explaining, because there's always an opportunity to kind of introduce again and again your stand, what you believe in. And ayun, parang don't give up on that initial rejection or on that parang sting of shocks, hindi kami talo, hindi niya ako maintindihan, pangit yung perspective niya. Yun lang, change happens gradually, and don't be discouraged if hindi mangyari agad-agad. Just continue trying.
Thank you so much, Reese and Prof. Xiao. Totoo na we should always come from a point of understanding and not hatred. And as much as we would like to answer all of the questions, we are down to our last question na lang. Ang dami pang nagsisend, but I think you can save those questions for another forum, or let's reach out to our speakers after this and get in touch. So for our last question, for the both of you then po, what is your message for aspiring leaders who are still hesitant to step out of their comfort zones? And how can we show heroism in this time of crisis?
Mauna ako kasi I want to give save the best for last, kumbaga. Reese and then Leni Robredo, di ba? Anyway, it's my challenge to young people. Kasi siguro, let's be frank. Let's have a frank conversation. And these are a few final words. Bakit parang ang lakas-lakas pa rin ng naratibo, ng paniniil, ng karahasan? Bakit gustong-gusto ito ng tao? Alam nyo, kailangan nating tignan nito na, kailangan makita natin na mahalaga talaga yung creative resistance at radical empathy. Because, kung lahat ng hindi yung nag-agree sa'yo, tatawagin mong mangmang, talagang wala talagang mangyayari. To understand them, to understand why our fellow men, ang bayan natin, ay may mga ganitong mga tendensiya at ganitong mga adhikain, ay dahil sa kapalpakan ng mga nangyari sa mga nagdaang panahon. Kailangan maintindihan natin yon. Kasi pagka ginawa na natin yan, pag naintindihan natin yan, yung naratibo nila at yung validity ng naratibo na yan, doon natin makikita kung paano tayo makakagawa ng bagong naratibo. Unless we understand their narrative, we could never make and create an alternative narrative. Tandaan po natin yan. And dahil pag hindi natin ginawa yan, tayo-tayo lang nagbobolahan. A lot of talks like this will happen. Tayo-tayo lang nakikinig, tayo-tayo lang nanonood. It's really useless because we all know this already. But when we let them listen to us, because we have radical empathy, I'm not saying do not call out the bad. I'm not saying do not call out the bad. I'm just saying that there is a way to call out the bad in a creative way. so that people will listen to you. Diba? Also, my last point would be, so it's radical empathy to call out the wrongs in society with respect because they are all Filipinos. Hindi sila dayuhan, Pinoy sila eh. Mahalin natin yung kapwa nating Pilipino. At medyo ako nalulungkot sa statement. Nakikita ko sa mga kabataan, mga millennials, at mga senial. Ang hirap mo nang mahalin, Pilipinas. Ang hirap mo nang mahalin. Diba? Parang nakakalungkot yun pag sinabi mo mahirap nang mahalin ng Pilipinas. Kasi bayan natin ito eh. Kababayan mo yun eh. So doon papasok talaga yung creative empathy and creative resistance and revolutionary empathy or radical empathy. Now, my last point would be, we are all, as people, in the time of pandemic and in the time of crisis, we are all wounded and imperfect. Alam nyo, nakikita ko yung komedyante, di ba? May dalawang maskara. Yung komedyante, yung simbolo ng komedya. Dalawang maskara. Yung taong komedyante na nagpapakita ng kasiyahan, kapag siya yung umuwi sa bahay, siya yung malungkot. Di ba? Parang tayo yan eh. Tayong mga kabataan ngayon na maraming ikinalulungkot. But I hope that you use your pain and your understanding of human pain to create a message of truth, of hope. Reese said that earlier. Narinig ko sa kanya yung magbigay kayo ng naratibo ng pag-asa. Dahil alam nyo, mawala man ng lahat sa tao, habang may pag-asa siya, mananatili siyang matatag. So, use your pain and your understanding of human pain to create narratives of hope. Marami pong salamat.
That's so beautiful, Professor Xiao. I think na mahirap sundan yan kasi I'll jump off of what you said na use your pain. That's also something that I like saying to people kasi ako, as a songwriter, alam natin yan, yung mga artists, madalas na yung mga frustrated, suffering artists, sila yung nakaka-create daw ng good art. And for me, that's the same way that I look at it also. Siyempre, hindi madali to create from pain right then and there. Kasi you have to feel it first. And bigay mo sa sarili mo na malungkot, na ma-frustrate, na umiyak, na magalit. Pero after that, parang gusto ko na hindi masayang yung feelings ko na yun, yung negative feelings ko. Gusto ko lagi na i-recycle. Kumbaga sa basura, parang gusto kong gamitin siya and turn it into something else and not just throw it out. So those negative feelings, the pain, the suffering, the doubt, you can create something beautiful out of it. For example, you're an artist. If you're a writer like me, you can write. If you're an illustrator, you can draw your frustrations. And number one, outlet yon, and you don't have to show it to anyone. But the second step is, if you share it, kahit isang tao lang makakita nun, you'll never know talaga what influence art can bring. And sometimes as artists, may parang imposter syndrome kami na, shucks, they're praising me for something that I don't deserve. And you never know your sphere of influence until a person, a real life person tells you, etong kantang mong to, itong drawing mong to, itong nasulat mong to, nakatulong to sa akin para gumawa ng ganito, ganyan. And dun mo lang mabibigyan ng muka yung mga nababago dahil sa ideas mo na ginawa mo into reality, into a work of art that can be consumed. And if you're not an artist, ang daming ways. Again, the internet is our place, and we can open up discussions, friendly discussions, or at least open, civil discussions about any issues that we want to talk about. It's really hard. And I myself, sobrang daming fear in my heart. Hindi ko ikakaila na ang hirap for me to go out there and say, ito yung pinapaniwalaan ko, magbago tayong lahat. Mahirap kasi hindi ako all the time courageous. But I start with not being afraid to ask questions if I don't understand something. Because oftentimes I don't have full understanding of a certain thing. And I ask people that I know are more informed. I ask my family, I ask my friends, Oy, can you tell me more about this? Because I want to learn more about this. And I don't want to form my opinion based on things that I just think I know. And I don't want to form my radical thoughts based on things that I don't necessarily understand fully. So yun, I'm not afraid to ask questions. You can ask questions if you feel like hindi mo naiintindihan yung nangyayari sa bansa natin. If hindi ka nanonood ng news, you can start by consuming it in articles online. Especially now, limited yung media consumption natin. You can start by that. And you can start asking a friend who you know na sobrang mahilig mag-consume ng news, in the know sa mga balita. Just ask simple questions and try to form a better understanding through that. And if you are in a place of discomfort, if you're in a place of fear and discomfort, that's good, because that means that you're getting ready for something. You're getting ready for change. And change isn't always comfortable. Change isn't always, like a bed of roses and you're a butterfly. You have to go through something transformative. And sometimes that involves hurt and pain and discomfort and a lot of fear. So embrace your discomfort, because that means that you're at the brink of something that is going to be beautiful in the end.
Thank you so much, Professor Xiao and Reese, for a very insightful and truthful discussion. Especially right now, it's really not easy to do something. We have a lot of limitations. Hindi lang the geographic location that we have right now, the lockdown, but at the same time, the political limitations that the youth sector are really facing. So thank you so much for inspiring us and for sharing what actual steps we can take on engaging and forwarding our advocacy. So now po, we're moving on to the part of the program wherein we're inviting the partners who brought this initiative into life. You can stay po to join the panel discussion with youth leaders, but right now po, may we welcome the panel discussion for youth leaders with the Youth Empowering Youth Initiative, Liberal Youth, Millennials PH, Youth Strike for Climate PH, University of Southeastern Philippines Obrero Campus Student Council, Youth United Pilipinas, Impact Leadership, and Kausap, University of St. Lasal.
Once again, thank you very much po, Professor Xiao and Reese, for joining us today. Yung mga attendees natin, wag muna kayong aalis, because for our finale, we will be hearing a special message of VP Leni to the Filipino youth. So I think we are ready now. All right.
Binabati ko ang mga kabataang dumadalo sa KKK Youth and Heroism Forum. Happy National Heroes Day sa inyong lahat. Nakakagaan ng loob isipin na sa kabila ng mga nangyayari sa paligid natin, nakakahanap pa rin kayo ng paraan na gumawa ng mga espasyong tulad nito para pag-usapan yung mga bagay na tunay na mahalaga. Isa na dyan ang papel ninyong mga kabataan sa pagbuo ng isang mas patas, mas makatao, at mas makatarungang lipunan. Hindi biro ang hamon na kinakaharap natin. As COVID-19 cases continue to spike, and frontliners bear the strain on the healthcare system, poverty also hits our most vulnerable countrymen even harder. The inequality gap widens and hurts those in the margins. On top of this, rights that we have long thought inalienable are being challenged, brushed aside, and violated. Kaya nga very timely yung topic ninyo ngayon, Youth as Champions of Rights-Based Governance. Napapanahon kasi kung mapapansin ninyo, parang ang kumpas ng pambansang liderato nag-uugat sa pilosopiya ng tunggalian. Rather than unify, parang mas pinapalalim pa yung hidwaan sa lipunan. Pasaway laban sa pulis, health laban sa economy, kaligtasan laban sa karapatan. Parang laging kailangan pumili. At kung hindi mo pipiliin ang dikta ng mga nasa katungkulan, ituturing kang kalaban. By now, malinaw na dapat sa atin. Walang hard choice dito. At hindi siya mutually exclusive. Magkakarugtong ang lahat. Sa isip ng ilan, madaling gumawa ng dichotomy. The need to address the health crisis versus the need to uphold our people's rights. Pero kung tatanungin natin ang mga sarili natin, bakit ba natin ginagawa ang lahat ng ito? Iisa lang naman ang sagot. Dahil pinapahalagahan natin ang buhay ng bawat tao. Dahil bawat isa sa atin may dignidad. Mga karapatan na hindi dapat naietsapwera sa gitna ng pandemya. Upholding our rights forms part of the entire constellation of solutions that will lead us to a better normal. They are bricks that pave the pathway to a proper, strategic, humane response to the crisis of today. Respecting rights and putting the welfare of citizens front and center create a culture of compassion and communal responsibility. It builds a sense of solidarity and of nationhood, of systems that treat each citizen with equal dignity. Kapag may ganitong pagpapahalaga sa buhay ng bawat isa, people begin to think beyond their own self-interest. They begin to pull together, caring more about the safety of others, understanding that our fates are all intertwined. Sabay-sabay at magkakapit-bisig na humahakbang tungo sa better normal na binubuo natin. Kayong mga kabataan na humuhubog ng pinapangarap nating lipunan na ito, tandaan ninyo, you're never too young to make a difference. Walang pinipiling edad ang paglilingkod sa kapwa. Sa pangalan ng forum ninyo, magkakabit yung youth at heroism. And this has never been more relevant than it is today. Dahil ang pinakakinakailangan natin ngayon, yung kilalanin ang pagkabayani ng isa't isa at magsilbing bayani para sa kapwa. Not with grand gestures or dramatic displays, but with small, sure, collective steps that inch us closer to our goals. Hindi kailangan na magarbo. Ang kailangan yung tiyak. Empower the powerless. Give voice to those who are trying to find theirs. Resist lies and disinformation. Speak truth to power. Ito mismo ang ibig sabihin ng pagiging bayani. Ang pagtindig para sa tama at mabuti, kahit may takot at pangamba. Ang pagsulong sa kabila ng panganib, kanang paa sa harap ng kaliwa. Ang pagtuon ng husay at lakas, palagi, sa ikabubuti ng kapwa. Dahil nakakahawa ang tapang, nakakahawa ang kabutihan, nakakahawa ang paninindigan. Tiwala akong walang pagsubok ang hindi natin kayang lagpasan, lalo na dahil kasama namin kayong mga kabataan. Maraming salamat sa inyo at mabuhay kayong lahat.